I knew something was wrong before Claire even opened her mouth. The sun had barely come up over our block in Nashville, that pale gold light slipping through the kitchen windows and turning everything soft. The townhouse was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the low hiss of the coffee maker I had set on time of the night before. It should have felt normal, familiar, ours. Instead, it felt like I had walked into someone else's house. Claire stood at the marble island in a cream satin robe I'd never seen before. It looked expensive, the kind of thing bought for a life that needed to be performed. Her hair was pinned up loosely, one side falling over her cheek, and she was drinking orange juice from one of our wine glasses, like it was 8 at night instead of 6:30 in the morning. She didn't turn when I came in. She just stared out the window toward the narrow courtyard, one hand wrapped around the stem of the glass. "Morning," I said. Nothing in my voice was sharp. Nothing in hers had to be, either. That was the part one understood too late. People think marriages end with shouting, slammed doors, broken plates. Mine ended in a spotless kitchen that smelled like coffee and citrus. She glanced at me then, up and down, like I was a salesman who had knocked too early. "You're up?" she said. I stopped near the counter. "I live here." That should have been a joke. Once it would have been. Claire would have smirked, maybe walked over in those soft socks she wore around the house, stolen a sip of my coffee before I could even pour it. We used to move around each other easily, like a habit built over years. That morning, she gave me a thin smile that never touched her eyes. "Yes," she said, taking another drink. "I'm aware." There was a plate on the counter with half a croissant on it, still warm. A white bakery box sat folded beside it. I hadn't bought it. She hadn't baked it. Someone had brought breakfast into my home before sunrise, and Claire had arranged the evidence in plain sight, like she wanted me to notice, but not question it yet. I poured my coffee anyway. Black. My hand was steady. That surprised me. She watched me now, not with guilt, not with fear, with impatience. I asked, "Where'd that come from?" She lowered her glass slowly. "Does it matter?" That was the moment something cold moved through me. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. Because Claire didn't sound offensive. She sounded done. I looked at the robe again. The glass. The untouched second cup near the sink. And standing there in my own kitchen, with sunrise creeping over counters and a woman I had loved for 11 years looking at me like I was in a way, I understood that whatever had died between us had not died that morning. I was only arriving late to the funeral. Claire set the glass down with care, like she didn't want to spill a single drop of anything, especially herself. I leaned against the counter and waited. The coffee was too hot to drink, so I held the mug between both hands and watched her the way you watch a storm roll in over water. Quietly, because by then I knew noise would only make her sharper. She folded her arms over that satin robe and looked at me with a kind of polished exhaustion, like she had already lived through this conversation in her head so many times that now she was bored by the real version. "We need to stop pretending," she said. The words landed softly. That was what made them ugly. Pretending what? That this still works. She tipped her head slightly, studying me. "It hasn't worked for a long time, Evan." Outside, a delivery truck rattled somewhere down the street. Inside, the kitchen stayed still. Clean counters, white cabinets, morning light spreading across the floor. It looked like the kind of room where people talked about paint colors and vacation plans, not where a marriage got cut open. I asked, "So that's it?" She gave a small shrug. "I want out." No tears, no hesitation, just a sentence placed neatly between us. I stared at her for a second, then at the second coffee cup by the sink. My eyes kept coming back to it. A plain white mug with a thin line of lipstick on the rim that wasn't Claire's shade. She saw me look. "There's someone else," she said. She didn't blurt it out. She offered like a correction, like we were reviewing numbers and she was fixing a mistake on a page. I nodded once. "What's his name?" "Luke." She said it easily, too easily, like his name had been sitting in her mouth for weeks. "And Luke," I said, "understands you?" Her mouth curved. Not quite a smile. "Actually, yes." I let that sit there. She stepped closer to the island, fingertips resting on the stone. "He listens. He sees me. He understands who I am now. Now. Yes, she said, and there was again that calm, rehearsed certainty. People change, Evan. I've changed. I looked at her and realized she expected this to go smoothly. She expected a little hurt, maybe some disbelief, but in the end she expected compliance. A quiet exit, me packing a bag, me disappearing from the frame, so she could move cleanly into the next one. That was the strangest part. She wasn't confessing like someone caught in something messy. She was delivering terms. I didn't want this to be dramatic, she said. I just think it's better if we're honest. Honest. The word almost made me laugh. Instead, I took one slow sip of coffee, finally cool enough to drink, and looked at the woman across from me as if I'd never seen her clearly before. She stood in my kitchen wrapped in silk, speaking another man's name with practiced calm, and all I could think was that Claire had not fallen into this. She had been walking toward it for a long time. I set the cup down carefully, not because I needed to, but because control starts with small things. Hand steady, voice even, no sudden movements she could react to. Claire watched me like she was waiting for a scene. She didn't get one. How long? I asked. She exhaled slowly, like she appreciated question. A few months. A few months. I nodded again, as if we were discussing a contracted delay or a missed payment. Inside, something shifted into place. Not breaking, aligning. And during those months, I said, "You've been what?" Deciding. Her eyes didn't waver. "I've been figuring out what I want. And you figured it out." Yes. The confidence in that one word was absolute. I leaned back slightly against the counter, crossing my arms. "So what's the plan?" She blinked once, like she hadn't expected that. Not the question, the tone. "I'll stay with a friend for a bit," she said. "We'll separate things calmly. No need to make this harder than it has to be. We'll separate things, like untangling cables, like dividing furniture after a move, not like ending a marriage." I studied her face. There was no hesitation, no flicker of doubt, just that same rehearsed calm. Every word placed exactly where she wanted it. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new for her. The decision had already been made somewhere else. Late nights, quiet conversations, probably in spaces I never saw. This morning wasn't the beginning. It was the announcement. "I've outgrown this," she added, almost gently. The sentence hung there. Not we. Not us. This. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But that was the moment everything became clear in a way it hadn't before. Outgrown. She wasn't confused. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't caught in something messy and complicated. She had already rewritten the story in her head. And in that version, I wasn't her partner anymore. I was something she used to be. I let a few seconds pass, long enough for her to feel them. Then I asked, "Does he know you're still here?" A pause. Small, controlled, but real. "Yes," she said. Of course he did. I nodded once more, slow, deliberate. Good. That word seemed to throw her off more than anything else I'd said. "Good," she repeated. I pushed away from the counter and picked up my keys from the small wooden tray by the door, the same place I'd left them every day for years. "Yeah," I said, heading toward the hallway. "It's better when everyone's working with the same version of the truth." She turned slightly, watching me now with something new in her eyes. Not guilt, uncertainty. "Where are you going?" she asked. I paused just long enough to answer. "Out," I said, and then I walked past her, out of the kitchen, and into a house that no longer felt like mine. Already thinking, already calculating, already understanding one simple thing. Claire hadn't just found someone else. She had built another life, and I had just seen the surface of it. I didn't go far. Just around the block, past a row of identical townhouses with their trimmed hedges and quiet driveways. I parked halfway down the street, where the angle let me see our garage without being obvious. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. I checked the time. 7:12 a.m. Claire was still inside, moving through the house I had paid for, touching things I had chosen, drinking coffee that had been mine 10 minutes earlier. And now I was sitting outside like a stranger, waiting to see who else belonged there. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and forced myself to breathe evenly. No rushing. No assumptions. Just watch. At 7:26, a silver pickup turned the corner. Clean. Newer model. Tennessee plates. It slowed slightly as approached, then pulled directly into my driveway without hesitation. Not a pause. Not a second of doubt. Whoever was driving had done this before. I didn't move. The garage door began to lift before the truck even fully stopped. Code access. My jaw tightened, but everything else stayed still. The truck rolled inside. The door closed behind it like it had swallowed something whole. I counted in my head. 10 seconds. 20. At 32, the side door from the garage into the house opened. He stepped in like he lived there. Mid-30s, maybe. Tall. Casual. Dark jacket. Jeans. One hand holding a paper bag from a bakery I recognized downtown. The same white box sitting on my kitchen counter. The same breakfast. He didn't knock. Didn't hesitate. Didn't look around like he was somewhere he shouldn't be. He walked straight in. I watched the door close behind him, slow and final, and felt something settle into place inside me. Not anger. Not even shock. Confirmation. Claire hadn't just met someone. She had given him access. Not just to herself, but to my home, my space, my routines. The garage code wasn't something you shared lightly. It wasn't spontaneous. It was deliberate, planned, repeated. I looked at the house again. The windows, the quiet front door, the same place where, for years, nothing unexpected ever happened. Now it held a man who knew exactly how to enter it. I reached for my phone, opened the camera, and zoomed in on the driveway. Took a picture of the truck. The plate, the timestamp, then another, documentation. Because this wasn't a moment anymore. It was a pattern. I leaned back in the seat and stared at the closed garage, already running through timelines in my head. Mornings I had left early. Nights I had worked late. Weekends I had been out of town. How many times had that truck been here? How many mornings had started exactly like this one? Only I wasn't there to see it. Inside the house, behind that quiet door, my wife was having breakfast with another man, and the worst part wasn't that it was happening. It was how normal it looked. I didn't go back inside. Not yet. Instead, I drove. No music. No calls. Just the quiet hum of the road, and the same thought looping in my head. How long has this been happening? By 8:10, I was sitting in a parking lot outside my office, engine off, laptop open. I didn't check emails. I didn't log into work systems. I logged into ours. Joint accounts. Shared folders. The places couples don't think to hide things because they assume trust will do the hiding for them. I started with the bank statements. At first, everything looked normal. Utilities, groceries, subscriptions, the predictable rhythm of a stable life. Then I slowed down, line by line. Patterns don't show up unless you're patient. 3 months ago, there was a charge from a boutique hotel in Gatlinburg. 2 nights, midweek. I hadn't been there. I clicked into it. No notes. Paid from our joint account. 2 weeks later, another charge. Different name, same area. Cabin rental. I opened a new document. Dates. Amounts. Locations. Then I kept going. Rideshare logs. She hadn't deleted those. Pickups from our address on mornings I remembered leaving early. Drop-offs in parts of town she had no reason to be in. And returns, hours later, never matching her usual schedule. I cross-referenced them on my calendar. Every time I had been out of the house longer than usual, there was movement, not random, aligned. My jaw tightened slightly, but my hands kept moving. Next, credit card purchases. A jewelry store. Not one I recognized. I opened the receipt. Custom engraving. Men's watch. I stared at the line for a few seconds longer than I needed to. The payment had come from a renovation fund we'd set aside 6 months ago. Money we had talked about using for the kitchen. Instead, it had been turned into something she could strap to another man's wrist. I added it to the document. Then the storage unit charges appeared. That one made me pause. Monthly payments. Small, consistent. Started 4 months ago. We didn't have a storage unit. Not that I knew of. I leaned back slightly, staring at the screen. This wasn't careless. It wasn't impulsive. Claire hadn't just stepped outside the marriage. She had been building something parallel to it. Trips, gifts, logistics, space. A second structure running alongside mine, using the same resources, the same money, the same life. I closed my eyes for a second, just long enough to steady the noise trying to rise. Then I opened them again and kept going, because at that point, I understood something clearly. I wasn't discovering an affair. I was uncovering a system, and systems leave trails. By noon, I knew enough to stop guessing. Now I needed proof that couldn't be explained away. I closed the laptop and sat there for a minute, watching people move in and out of the office building like nothing had shifted. Normal conversations. Coffee cups. Phones pressed to ears. Parallel lives. Everyone had one. Most people just hit it better. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't used in years. Daniel Reeves. We went to college together. Computer science. Quiet guy. The kind who never said much but always knew more than he showed. Last I heard, he was running a small repair shop outside Franklin, specializing in data recovery. I hit call. He picked up on the third ring. Evan. Yeah. A pause. Then, didn't expect to hear from you. I need a favor. Another pause. Shorter this time. What kind? The kind where I bring you a device and you don't ask questions. He let out a small breath through his nose. That kind usually means something went wrong. It did. Silence again. Then come by. Claire's tablet was still in the house. She'd left it on the side table in the living room like it didn't matter. Like whatever was inside, it was already clean, already safe. That told me two things. Either she was careful, or she thought I wasn't. I went back inside just after 1. The house was empty. No truck, no breakfast. Just a faint smell of coffee and something sweet lingering in the air like a memory that hadn't settled yet. Her tablet was exactly where I expected it to be. I picked it up, turned it over once in my hands, then slipped it into my bag. No hesitation. Daniel's shop was small, clean, quiet. He looked the same. Same posture. Same steady eyes that didn't miss much. He didn't ask what happened, just nodded toward the back. What am I looking for? He said. Anything she thought she deleted. He took the tablet, connected it to the system. Fingers moving quickly but without urgency. This might take a few hours, he said. I'll wait. It took 3. 3 hours of silence, broken only by the soft clicking of keys and the occasional hum of equipment. Then Daniel leaned back slightly. She wasn't as thorough as she thought. He turned the screen toward me. Folders. Recovered backups. Fragments of data stitched back together. I leaned forward. Voice notes. Dozens of them. Dated. Labeled. I clicked one. Her voice filled the room. Soft. Intimate. Different. Hey. I booked the loft. It's perfect. You're going to love it. I didn't move. Another file. Photos. Furniture layouts. Decor samples. Art pieces. Not ours. Or not ours anymore. Next, documents. Lease agreement. Downtown Nashville. Furnished loft. 2 names. Claire and Luke. My jaw tightened slightly, but I kept going. Inventory lists. Itemized. Furniture. Wall art. Kitchenware. Even smaller things. Frames, rugs, books. Some marked from house. From my house. I scrolled slower now. Family items. Pieces that had been passed down. Things Claire had always called ours. Now labeled for transfer. Planned. Scheduled. Not emotional. Not impulsive. Organized. Final. I sat back in the chair. For a moment, the room felt very quiet. Not empty. Just clear. She wasn't leaving. I said quietly. Daniel glanced at me. What do you mean? I looked back at the screen. She already left. Everything I thought was still mine, my home, my marriage, my life, had already been divided, packed, and reassigned. I just hadn't been informed yet. And now I finally was. I didn't confront her. Not that day. Not the next. Because by then, confrontation felt unnecessary. Claire had already said everything she was going to say. The rest of it, the real story, was sitting in files, timestamps, receipts, voice notes. Clean, organized, unemotional, just like her. So I built something to match it. That night, I sat alone at the dining table with my laptop open and a legal pad beside it. The house was quiet again, like nothing had happened, like it was waiting for instructions. I created a timeline, not a rough outline. Precise. Dates of trips, purchases, storage payments, rideshare logs, audio files, lease signing. Every point connected, every gap filled. What she said, what she did, where those two things didn't match. It took hours. At some point, the coffee went cold again. I didn't notice. By the time I finished, it wasn't just evidence. It was a structure, and it told a very simple story. Claire didn't fall out of love. She relocated it. The next morning, I drove to Franklin. Small office, brick exterior. No unnecessary design. The kind of place that didn't need to impress anyone because the work spoke for itself. Miles Carter, local attorney. Quiet reputation. Precise. He greeted me with a handshake that lasted exactly as long as it needed to. "Evan," he said, "what can I do for you?" I handed him the folder. Everything's in there. He didn't open it immediately. Just looked at me for a second. "Divorce?" "Yes." "Contested?" I paused briefly. "It will be." That seemed to be enough. He went through it slowly. No reactions. No comments. Just turning pages. Occasionally marking something with a pen. 10 minutes. 20. At 35. He leaned back slightly. "This is thorough," he said. "It's accurate." "I don't doubt that." He tapped the page showing the lease agreement. "She's planning asset transfer." "Yes." "And using joint funds to support it." "Yes." Another pause. Then he looked at me directly. "Do you want to confront her or protect yourself first?" The question mattered more than it sounded. I didn't answer immediately, because that was the line. One option was emotional. The other was permanent. "I want this finished," I said. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. Slight shift forward. Focus sharpening. "Then we do this clean," he said, "and we do it fast." The next hour moved differently. Not like a conversation, like construction. We outlined everything. Immediate filing, asset protection, account separation, property claims, the house, the lake lot she bragged about online, but had never legally touched. Even the business she liked to present as ours. It wasn't, not on paper. And paper was what mattered now. At one point, Miles said, "She's assuming leverage." I looked at him. "She doesn't have it." "No," he agreed calmly, "but she thinks she does." He closed the folder. "That's where this becomes unpleasant for her." When I walked out of that office, nothing had exploded. No shouting, no confrontation, no dramatic scene. Just signatures, documents, processes already in motion. Claire still thought she was in control of how this would end. She thought she had planned everything. What she didn't realize was simple. She had built her exit. I had just secured mine. I waited 2 days. Not because I needed time to think, because timing matters more than truth. By then, everything was in motion. Papers drafted, accounts flagged, protections quietly locking into place. Claire still moved through the house like nothing had shifted, like she was transitioning, not losing. Luke's truck came twice more. Same time, same routine, no hesitation. That consistency told me something important. People who think they're safe stop being careful. I sat in my car outside of school in Murfreesboro just before dismissal. Brick building, clean lawns, parents already lining up, engines idling, checking their phones. Normal life, predictable. Luke had won. Of course he did. Her name was Rachel. I had found it buried in records Daniel recovered. Emergency contact forms. A scanned document Claire had saved without thinking. Full name, workplace, everything neat and accessible if you knew where to look. I watched the front doors open. Children spilled out first, then staff. Rachel wasn't hard to spot. Composed, professional, the kind of woman who held structure together without needing recognition for it. She walked with purpose, speaking briefly to a colleague before heading toward the parking lot. I stepped out of my car. "Rachel?" She turned, polite but cautious. "Yes." "My name is Evan." That was enough to put a question in her eyes. "I need 5 minutes," I said, "and then you could decide if you ever want to hear from me again." She hesitated, measured me, then gave a short nod. 5. We sat in her car, windows up, engine off. I didn't rush it. I handed her my phone. "Start here. Photos first. The truck, my driveway, timestamps, then the documents, then the lease." She didn't react immediately. That was the part that told me she was strong. People expect tears, shock, denial. Rachel read, scrolled, paused on certain things longer than others. Then I showed her the messages. The voice note, Claire's voice, soft and certain. "Once everything's moved, it'll finally feel like ours." Rachel's hand tightened slightly around the phone. Still no outburst, just a slow inhale. "How long?" she asked. "Months." She nodded once, processing. Then quietly, he told me he was working late. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She handed the phone back. "Do you have everything?" she asked. "Yes." "Proof?" "Yes." Another pause. Then she looked straight ahead through the windshield. "Send it to me?" No emotion in her voice, just decision. I sent everything. Clean, organized, the same way I had built it. When I finished, she checked her email, eyes scanning quickly. Then she closed her phone and sat there for a moment, still, controlled. And then she said something that told me exactly who she was. "He's not going to control how this ends." Not loud, not angry, certain. I nodded once. "Neither is she," I said. That was the only thing we agreed on out loud. When I drove away, nothing felt explosive. No chaos. No immediate fallout. Just two separate lives that had been quietly redirected onto the same path. Claire thought she had built something stable with Luke. Something hidden, protected. What she didn't account for was simple. She wasn't the only one being lied to. And now, neither of us were. It didn't happen all at once. That's what most people get wrong about things falling apart. There's no single moment where everything collapses. It starts with small fractures. Then the pressure finds them. Claire noticed the first crack 3 days later. She was standing in the kitchen again. Same place as that morning, but this time her phone didn't leave her hand. "Did you touch anything?" she asked. I was at the counter, reading through emails. "Like what?" "Our accounts," she said, sharper now. "Something's off." I looked up briefly. "Is it?" She stared at me, trying to measure something that wasn't there anymore, because I wasn't reacting. I wasn't playing the role she expected, and that made everything harder for her control. By the end of the week, the second crack appeared. Her charity board appearance was suddenly postponed. No explanation, just a quiet removal from the schedule. She mentioned it over dinner, like it was nothing. "It's probably just a conflict," she said. I nodded. Probably. But I had already seen the emails. Questions, concerns, financial inconsistencies tied to her accounts. Things she hadn't expected anyone to look at too closely. Then came her office. Real estate is built on perception, trust, reputation. And once people start asking questions, those things don't disappear instantly. They thin out. Conversations stopped when she walked into rooms. Deals slowed. One client pulled out. Then another. Nothing loud. Just quiet distance. Luke broke first. Of course he did. Men like him always do when pressure shows up where it wasn't supposed to. Claire got the call late one night. I heard her pacing in the living room, voice low but tight. "What do you mean you can't do this?" Silence. Then sharper. "No, you don't get to disappear now." Another pause. Longer this time. And then the line that told me everything. "You said we were in this together." I didn't need to hear his response. I already knew it. He wasn't built for consequences, only for convenience. The next morning, his truck didn't come. Not that day. Not the day after. His number stopped appearing on her screen. And just like that, the man she had reorganized her life around vanished. But not quietly. No, he made sure to protect himself first. Because within days, the story started shifting. Subtly, carefully, Luke began talking. Not publicly, but enough. Enough to distance himself. Enough to suggest that Claire had pushed things further. That she had misrepresented her situation. That she had been unstable. It was clean, strategic, cowardly, and effective. Claire felt it. I could see it in the way she moved through the house now. Faster, less certain, her control slipping in small, visible ways. One night, she finally turned to me. This is getting out of hand. I looked at her calmly. Is it? Her eyes searched mine, looking for something. Help, maybe, or the version of me that would step in and fix things. But that version was gone. You need to say something, she said. People are getting the wrong idea. I held her gaze for a second, then asked quietly, which part is wrong? She didn't answer, because for the first time since that morning in the kitchen, she didn't have a version of the story that worked anymore. Everything she had built, the image, the control, the narrative, was unraveling, not because I exposed it loudly, but because once the truth starts moving, it doesn't need help. Claire signed the papers without looking at me. That was the part one remembered most. Not the arguments that came before it. Not the quiet collapse of everything she had tried to hold together. Just that moment, a pen in her hand, documents laid out between us, and her eyes fixed anywhere but in my direction. Miles sat across the table, calm as always. Once you sign, this is final. She nodded, no hesitation, because by then, she didn't have anything left to negotiate. The house, mine. The lake lot she used to talk about online, like it was part of her future, never legally hers. The business she claimed as ours, never in her name. The account she thought she could move, locked before she even tried. And Luke, gone. Completely. No calls. No messages. No support. Just silence where she had built expectation. She signed, slowly, carefully, like she was trying to control at least one thing to the very end. When she finished, she slid the papers forward. Miles collected them, checked each page, then gave a single, small nod. That's it. No dramatic ending. No final speech. Just closure. She packed that afternoon. Not everything. Just what was actually hers. Clothes. Personal items. A few boxes. The rest stayed exactly where it was. Because for all her planning, for all the lists, the storage units, the loft, none of it had translated into ownership. She moved through the house quietly. No anger. No accusations. Just smaller, like the version of herself she had been building didn't fit anymore. At the door, she paused. I left something for you, she said. I didn't ask what. She hesitated, like she expected a question. When it didn't come, she nodded once and walked out. No goodbye. The door closed softly behind her. The house felt different immediately. Not empty. Clear. I walked back into the kitchen. Same counters. Same light. Same place where it had all started. There was an envelope on the table. My name on it. Her handwriting. I looked at it for a few seconds. Then I picked it up, turned it over, and set it back down, unread, because whatever explanation she had written wasn't going to change anything that mattered. Weeks passed, then months. I didn't rush anything, didn't try to replace what was gone. I rebuilt slowly, room by room, routine by routine. I sold the things that didn't belong to me anymore, not physically, but mentally, kept what was real, removed what wasn't. Some nights were quiet. Some mornings felt heavier than others. But there was no confusion anymore. No second version of reality running underneath the one I could see. Just truth. Simple. Uncomfortable sometimes. But clean. The last thing I did was change the garage code. Not out of anger. Just accuracy. Because access should match reality. I don't know what happened to Claire after that. I heard things. Fragments. Nothing solid. It didn't matter. Her story stopped being mine the moment she rewrote it without me. Now, when I stand in that same kitchen at sunrise, coffee in hand, The house is quiet again, but it's a different kind of quiet. Not the kind that hides things. The kind that doesn't need to. And that's the only thing I was ever looking for. Not love, not revenge. Just a life where nothing exists behind my back.